get inspired by you guys and do some things for the community. So again, my name is Thomas Poppelgaard. I'm in Denmark, the other side of Europe. It's not Netherlands, it's Denmark. Viking, up in Scandinavia, between Norway, Sweden, Denmark. Small country, 5.5 something million people. Anyways, I also have tons of awards. This is a yearly award, and I'm of course super proud to be part of that. It's a lot of community things I put into those. I'm proud to be Microsoft MVP and also Azure Cloud Advisor, and then part of NVIDIA and Citrix and VMware. I just got actually renewed my VMware UC award, and I really take this part of being humble and honored to be part of it, because I know it's so hard to even just get renewed. For you guys also don't know, I'm actually one of the co-founders and leaders of the Danish Citrix user group, so I kind of put a lot of effort into it. And one of the last things I just wanted to say, I'm part of this TIFCA. If you guys don't know about it, it's called the International Future Computer Association, and there's some really freaking cool people part of that. So if somebody know more about like visual computing, there's John Petty, there's a lot of people who's written tons of books, and I'm not the smart person compared to all the other ones. That's way different than intuitive computing, but there are things you're about to see that will come. But that's something I've been doing for about 1.5 years, part of that group. So you're probably like, how does Thomas have time, right? So what do I do for a living? I'm actually a consultant here in May. It will be my 9th year being independent. And that's why I have my blog, Poppelgaard.com. It's still the same blog as I kept for actually 12.5 years now. There's no advertisement, of all kind of vendors, stuff like that. It's just me, and then contributing on things I think is important to get out to the community, where I'm covering, Microsoft, Citrix, and VMware, and also, of course, GPUs. Anyways, let's get rolling. I'm the independent guy. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not, vendor specific. I'm agnostic. So this is really freaking cool stuff I'm about to share. It's something that has been in the works since we started the early conversation around summertime 2021, and then we agreed on the work. So you're about to see, who's been behind it and so on. But it's me who's been doing all the work, and I'm very excited to share because it's my own words. It's my work. And it's stuff that's being used, within Microsoft as well, I think. So what is exactly about? So it's video conference system, how they're working in Azure Virtual Desktop environments, right? So, and if I look back before I did this work, I've been working a lot in the pandemic in 2020. Around 80% of my work I did was actually United States. I worked with a Microsoft Gold partner. I think I call Open Systems, but they were also a part of Ignite and won a lot of awesome things they've done. But I was more external consultant. So I've done a lot of work with pandemic customers, pharma customers, and a lot of hospitals. And, video conferencing has been definitely one of the things where we've seen caveats, things working, not working, and making people, to choose what kind of devices they want to support, and potentially making some customers not being able to roll out specific devices. And this investigation I did after, a little bit over half year after later, kind of actually confirms a lot of the things that I saw more out of the field of customers. Again, this is work I've done for a customer, right, where I'm able to share it in public. So we're using the NV32 ASV4 instance, which is an NVIDIA, not NVIDIA, but NV. Oh man, it always blows me up, this NV naming, but it's AMD. I'm going to go through it, what each instance is. And then we have the Intel instance, which is the D32 ASV4, and then we have the D32 ASV4, which is the AMD Epic CPU instance. So it's 3 different instances, and typical customers, use one or the other, or maybe they're evaluating one, or maybe they don't. So I just want to make it very clearly that this investigation has been done in together with collaboration with Advanced Micro Devices. They made all this possible, and I'm so grateful and thankful, of course, to make that possible, because otherwise, if somebody didn't paid, because it's a lot of time of my time that I put into this, and I'm so happy that of course I can share this. Many times when I work with customers, I don't necessarily share that in public, because then it becomes sensitive. Here, this is some work that's been totally built up from ground, and there are a lot of things that was not possible before, of the data capturing that we've been doing, where I've been teaming up with some community people, and they've been developing software tools to be able to grab the data. So it's freaking amazing, but it's a lot of work. The work has been over many, many months, and it was released in December 2021. So the work of the findings with Teams and Google Meet and Zoom with Azure Virtual Desktop, I created 3 different independent blogs where I'm covering each subject, because it is really a lot of data. And some people might just only want to look at Teams, right? But if somebody's saying, "Hey, we're using Meet, and how does it impact Azure Virtual Desktop?" Or, "Hey, we're using Teams, how does that impact Azure Virtual Desktop?" These blogs I created here is tons of data that have been put into it, and then they've been simplified. So for you to better understanding what actually I'm trying to say. So let's dig into it. So the lab that I have is really geeky, okay? But I'm a geeky person, so that fits perfect onto me. But the first thing we want to do was actually create kind of a room for typical education, and they have Chromebooks. So a lot of students, kids, right? The Chromebooks is very popular in that scene, and then also MacBooks, of course, are, and then PCs. But this also actually kind of, if you look at enterprises, they are also using those kind of things, where typically see Windows, Mac, and then some also have Chromebooks. So pretty good mix. Thin client is not part of this investigation. I just want to make that highlight, because I've been approached by Ideal, they say, "Why didn't you include us?" So that was not part of it. Sorry, but hey, I'm happy to do it again. So what am I also doing? I'm simulating 15 total concurrent users. So there's 10 PCs, 1 Mac, Book Air. And it's not like latest and greatest. There's a very big mix of even the Windows PCs. Some of them are actually, plus like 10 and 12 years old PCs. So some super old Dell laptops I have, and a mix of some I invested long time ago, like 6-7 years ago, some Lenovo laptops, and there's some newer gaming devices I have. But there's a big mix. It would be wrong if I did like the latest and greatest Windows PC, because then you're not getting like broad experience typical also what customers have. I know many customers that are kind of to streamline, standardize, only having 3 models, something like that. But having a broader mix, I think, is really important to do that, especially if you're working from home, right? There's a mix to put into that. But of course, it potentially can impact also user experience. So again, just to rephrase, it's Teams with video conferencing and Zoom, and what they have familiar, those 2 software components, as they have Teams has a software component that's optimized for Azure Virtual Desktop, and Zoom has the same. And then Meet is running, at that time, it was running in the browser. They are all, Teams and Zoom are all installed on the NV32ASV4 instance, and the D32ASV4 and the D32SV4 instances. And again, optimized. So you're probably wondering what operating system was I using. So I was using on the Azure Virtual Desktop, using on those 3 instances I just mentioned, Windows 10 multi-session 1909. And this was done, the start of the work was done around July, I think, 2021. And then we actually added the Intel instance later, the D32S v4, because initially we only did the NV32S v4 and then the D32AS v4, which is AMD, Epic, both CPU, and then we actually added Intel to see how big difference is there. So what are the different instances? What is Thomas talking about? So it's 32 vCPU. It's pretty big, yeah. But we're also having 15 concurrent users, so we want to make sure that we have capacity to run it. And then we have 112 gigabyte memory. And the only thing where there's a difference between it is one of the instances have a GPU, right? And on the other one, it has an Intel CPU, and the last has Epic CPU. So what am I looking at the performance metrics at the endpoints? So this was first of all to get this data. I got inspired by Microsoft. They had in the docs how they could measure user experience, and Dennis Congreve also have been writing this. They have some documents on the docs. Which been inspiring me. How can I kind of creating a streamline of end user experience, because it's kind of not defined. So FPS in and out in code time per user are the values that we are looking at. We're also looking at output, input, network bandwidth latency, and to be able to capture this data at a super fast data time. Typical vendors do this like 30 seconds. That's typical what other vendors do, but they don't have actually these values part of the monitoring solutions. There's something you have to go in and either use perfmon and then create your own values, right? Or you have to create a script where you use perfmon and then use another monitoring piece. But if you guys know Marcel Maurer, I'm pretty sure he's been speaking here at your user group before. He's the creator of the WD admin, and he also created a monitoring tool for Sepago for Azure Virtual Desktop. We modified the monitoring tool he had and included these values I'm talking about right now here for the endpoint device. And I also got Marcel, take all my GPU experience. So he actually created the values of capturing GPU. He's never done it before, so he now has GPU metrics of compute and memory, and actually even further down into GPU, like 3D instruction sets and other things. I made him capturing those things because that's things I'm very interested in, because it can impact user experience, good and bad. And that's why you need to capture it from a monitoring perspective. And we also try to really, really push the system. Like, is it possible to capture the data each second, or can we, do each 10 second? And we did it by each second, and then Azure just, log analytics just broke. And even Sepago's his agent, he couldn't handle the data. It was just too much. So where we pushed it to the maximum edge was each 3 seconds, but that's also really, really impressive because I have worked with other monitoring tools. I'm not going to mention anything, but nobody's actually being able to do it down each 3 seconds and having a stable, line of data coming in without anything of spikes getting rid of. And that's something which is super. You have to be very careful when you're capturing data so quickly that the data doesn't get impacted and then break. Because you can't do that when you go down, lowering the seconds. There are some vendors where they talk more like milliseconds, right? But I'm like, that system's not ready for it yet. Maybe in the future. So what does it look like, my lab? This is my lab. This is a facility that I built, and I've been also, trying to make it even better. But here I have all the 15 devices, as you can see, and I have some 4K monitors, but that's not used for this project. So there's a big mix of Surface Book. You can see up in the left. That's something actually I bought a long time ago at an MVP summit, back in the good old days. And then I have a Mac, and then I have that's actually one of my first devices I bought when I just got independent in 2013, which is a Sony Vaio. You guys remember that device? Freaking awesome device, but hey, it works really great also. And then I have a mix of a little bit newer clients, and then up in the top to the right, it's four, sorry, five. Let's see here. Yes, 4 or 5 Chromebooks. Maybe it's five. It should be 5. And then in the bottom, it's all Windows 10 Lenovo and some Dell. And there's a Mac where I'm capturing data and confirming. And I'm also taking time notes, from start, begin, end. And I'm also capturing actually video. The video, you guys, I haven't released that in public yet, but I actually have video from all different workloads. So what workloads I've been doing? Thomas just keep on talking. So these are the testing workloads that we have. The workload one runs 30 minutes each time. So what it is, it's both video and audio. So the first person is a teacher, right? And then we have 14 other students who are connecting in to the video stream and then doing sharing. The first thing is the static sharing, which is a PDF. Actually, we open a rich content that I was provided, with some graphics and some text, but a pretty, just total typical PDF is just text, but it actually has rich graphics. So there's more, a little bit more high-end workload from a PDF perspective. And then on workload 2, which is taking it further, we have a screen sharing dynamic content. And what is that? So this is actually a YouTube video where the teacher on the left opens up a YouTube and a 4K video on Bali. Haven't been there. Really nice video of, but it's pushing it because 4K video stream, we wanted more kind of rich graphic, high frames running in, and then sharing that across the video stream to the participants. And then the third workload is where I both had the video of the YouTube of the Bali scene, 4K, and then I have the students are opening up Office 365, Word and Excel, and then they're taking notes of the teacher from the YouTube. So we kind of trying to simulate, a typical classroom experience where a person is doing screen sharing, where it's both video content and somebody's also working in that. So all this is happening in Azure Virtual Desktop, and on the multi-session Windows 10. Just want to make that very clear for you guys to understand. So the video and when the participants are also doing, everything is happening on the multi-session Windows 10. Alrighty, so let's dig into the next thing. Let's just see here. So Azure Virtual Desktop for endpoint supporting Teams. So Microsoft has this docs website where you can go in and see the client, how the features are. If we go back and look, say, hey, this was actually long time ago that this was done. And I updated this actually here I actually updated it here in February, because there's been a small change to how it's supporting Teams. So who's supporting optimization for Teams, right? It's only Windows who does that, and you can see that by the X. So here in February 2022, Microsoft has now released Mac support for Teams offload as well. So that's really, really great, that there, one more client has been coming in, because I saw a huge performance impact when Teams was opening up, when it's trying to do stuff for Rasterize, impacting using both a tremendous amount of GPU compute for that, because it doesn't have the redirection of Teams. So then it's happening on the multi-session host. It's doing all that work, right? And we also see a huge impact on the pure CPU instances. I'll come back to that later. So let's talk about Zoom. So if you guys don't know about Zoom, they have a special plugins for VDI where you install it on the multi-session host and then also on the endpoint if they support it. So they do support thin clients like Agile, where they have one. This, if you see, this is pretty, it's not like total up late to the latest, greatest, but you can see this from July. I'm going to show you something interesting just after this, but I can confirm to you guys that if you go and look at now the docs, the VDI docs here in March 2022, there's nothing changed. So they still support only with the offloading of Zoom on Windows endpoint and Mac and Agile thin clients. They don't support Chrome. They don't support Mac. I'm like, that really beep. But yeah, so what does that mean? What does it mean? It means you can get optimization for macOS and Android, which is going to be interesting how that's going to impact, right? So what I'm going to highlight here is this is another thing with the Azure Virtual Desktop client. If you take camera, which is very important when we talk here, right? We see each other's faces. It's working on Windows, it's working on Mac, but it doesn't work on Android. It doesn't work on a web client. So yeah, that's kind of limiting Chrome OS out of the equation, right? Even here in March 2022, I'm like, after so long time ago, Microsoft still hasn't fixed this yet. I'm kind of really disappointed about this. And I actually had a client who actually were, they couldn't implement Chromebooks because they couldn't get camera working on the Android. That's a bad thing. Microphones working, and it used to not work on the web client. That's working now. Yeah. Let's see here what we have. Speakers is also working great, so we get all, YouTube video, sound, people talking, all that is going in and getting synchronized with the video stream. So yeah, but camera is, I think, a quite important thing, especially when you have video conference like Teams, Google Meet, or Zoom you want to work with. So let's dig into the data. This is the NVIDIA, sorry, oh my God, this is bad. And it's getting recorded. So this is the NVIDIA 32 with which has an AMD GPU, as you guys might know as the NVIDIA 4. And it has an AMD EPIC CPU. Oh man, I feel so bad. So if we take Teams and it run, so the first one, the first workload with 15 concurrent users. Let's look at the data. And can somebody just confirm you can see my mouse, because then I'm going to try to focus your eyes on what I'm talking about, because there's so much data in here. Yes. Somebody come to me. You see my mouse? Awesome. Okay, so if you guys look here, so this is interesting. So with 15 concurrent users, so this is with PDF, right? And the teacher is sharing that with the 14 other participants, so total 15, right? We're using 15.3% CPU and 16.9 gigabyte. So that's, hey, we're not using that much system, but hey, the GPU is doing a lot of work. So 49% of the GPU is getting utilized with 15 users, but it's only 3.7 gigabyte frame buffer is being used. I'm also looking at, this is averages on the data getting sent per agent, and it's 20 megabyte. So, there's a lot of things happening. And receiving 12 megabyte on the network, and then we have 57 millisecond latency. And then we also have some even further data on how many frames we're getting out on the endpoint, which is 22 frames and 25. And then we have some encode times. So what I did here over to the right is I took, if you kind of take these numbers and multiply, with 100% CPU utilization how many users can you then get on, right? Uh, Potentially you could then get 97 users. Now that's also with like really pushing it to the max. Now, would you do that? Would you put 97 users on a one multi-session host? Probably not. I might one session go down, 97 users calling in. I don't know, but I'll leave it to you guys. But it's more to kind of give you an idea on potentially what could you actually size it up to if you only ran these Adobe application and the Teams application, and yeah, that's the first one. And the second one is the YouTube video where we're sharing that 4K video. So now you see the CPU only bumps up a little bit from 15% up to 17, and memory is also getting a bit up. Now we're getting 87% GPU utilization. But you can actually overcommit the system, right? And if you really overcommit let's say only on the CPU base, you could potentially run 84.5%. But I'm like, the GPU is so high. What would that mean if you go so high up with that? Now because they have the Mac redirection, this would go way down. It would, because at that time they didn't have the redirection for the Mac. So I can confirm it's doing a huge impact on this. You see also the bandwidth goes 2x up because of the video, and latency we see a little bit more, but it looks pretty good, the data here. And then with the third observation, I have 15 concurrent users with, now this 4K video, and they're taking notes. Interesting, the CPU actually go a little bit down, and even see GPU utilization, and I get a pretty good number, right? But it's still a great experience. Now with Meet, sorry, I'm just looking at time because I also want to make sure that I get it all through, you guys. I really don't want to rush it. And so let's talk about the Google Meet. Now you just saw from one screen, right? 97 users to 31, right? And 85 users on workload 2 to 21. And workload 3, 99 users to 30 users, right? So like we're really cutting. This application is super dense on a multi-session environment, right? So Meet is, doesn't do the redirection. They don't have any optimization on the endpoint for Azure Virtual Desktop. So it's doing a huge impact on the CPU, which is 47, where it was 15. And we see a super high immediately, actually, even just after a couple of users, it get 98% utilization on the GPU. Less GPU memory. So they're doing all the heavy lifting in how they're doing the synchronization. Now, the interesting thing is it works amazing. The user experience is amazing with Google Meet, but it's really hungry. And we know that from Chrome, right? Chrome is like many tabs, but it uses all the system that it has. And Google is really good with what they do. That the good thing is, they should optimize this, especially for remote environments. This is where they're kind of like, oh my God, this system is so intense. It impacts how we scale. That's what I'm trying to say here. And even here with workload 2, with the video and sharing that across screens, we see huge impact on the GPU and much higher CPU utilization. And then when we go to workload 3, which was the YouTube and the Office 365, all that happening across, we see a little bit less CPU. So it kind of matches workload 1, which I think is interesting. We can have Office 365, people working in it, not using much, but it's the video streams that just totally, hammering it. The reason why, and I tell you why is it so different between the two? Because this is pure video, and when you're screen sharing it out to the other, they see a larger window, which means it needs to encode more, right? Encoding more, software RAS rise is impacting the session host. And when you're working here, you are kind of moving to the side window, taking notes, and then you see in the other window of the the teacher, right? Do you see the data where they take the notes? So that's happening behind the scenes. You're probably wondering why is workload not freeing up even more intense. It's because it's getting more, smaller window of the video stream. Yeah, another thing I observed was the camera redirection takes 100% GPU and freeze takes 80% video encode. But it works really great with both video and audio synchronization across the devices. So Zoom, we see a big bump from 31 from Meet to 49, workload 1, and from workload 2, 21 to 40, and workload 3 from Meet. This is 30 users, and now we see 52. So if you compare it to Teams, it's kind of the half, right? So the 30% CPU utilization and really a lot of high GPU utilization. That's because of Chrome devices. You're probably wondering because they have VDI optimization for Mac and for PC. But if you don't have devices that doesn't have it, all that's going to impact the GPU, which is interesting by these observations I've done. So that one is really making it resource intense, and that's even actually with the cameras not getting. Keep in mind the Chromebooks actually don't have the camera redirection working, but the audio and microphone does work with those. So that's interesting that I kind of saw those kind of observations happening with it. If you more look at kind of like frames and all those kind of things, it's delivering feature-rich experience, good frames, and it's delivering really good experience with Zoom. But I do actually see a difference between Teams, Meet, and Zoom, where Teams is actually delivering really great experience, and with the high scaling, you can really scale up the environment with GPUs. But yeah, Meet, I think if it did a really good job on the quality of the graphics. But I'm like, if you're impacting the host so big, right? Do you really want that good quality? Hey, that's not up to me to decide. It's up to the company if they have Meet, right? And probably you should look at Teams after these observations I just gave you on AVD, right? Even from Zoom, you can have 2x the users by moving to Teams. Oh my God, what is Thomas now going to show? I'm going to show the Intel. So we just saw from, let's quickly just see it. 97 users on the GPU instance to now a pure CPU Intel. So, what is Thomas? Has Thomas not been talking about we should add a GPU to a video conference to get more users on? So this is actually showing you don't. And the reason why is because the redirection Microsoft had done is so good with Teams. So they're so good at offloading to the end client. Instead of having without a GPU, we get really little CPU utilization, and that's because all the heavy lifting is happening on the endpoint. And apparently there's some I guess some work to do to get that GPU optimized, because it's really doing an impact, which is interesting. I didn't expect to see these numbers. So the CPU utilization is really small, 11, 15, and 30.7 with Teams. And if you go to Meet, CPU just goes up, boom, 69%. And so this is with the CPU, right? And if I just go back to this with the GPU, you see a less CPU. This confirms. And I just go back here again. So it's actually confirming that Meet is using GPU. And if it doesn't have a GPU, it does suffer rasterize, and it does a performance impact on the CPU. So with Teams, it doesn't, because they redirect and do offloading. Teams Meet doesn't do that from Google. Now they are compressing and doing all that heavy lifting and video synchronization from the video servers and then down to the AVD host, and that's impacting the CPU with the software rasterize. Interesting results. Also because actually the GPU, we see way less latency, so less CPU on the GPU instance compared to the raw CPU instance. You also see actually a little bit more bandwidth happening on the endpoint with that, but it's delivering a good experience. If I'm more log at like frames per second, what's happening and more like from the eye perspective of the user. So that's interesting. And then if we take Zoom as one of the last in the D32S before, the CPU bumps up to 35. So again, let's just look at the numbers. So we had from 135 users to 21 and to 42. And with Zoom, if you just go to the GPU again, let's go one back. Sorry for jumping around, but it's 49. So it means the GPU is actually doing better job with compared to the Intel. So it's doing actually an impact here. That's interesting. So GPU actually makes sense to add for Zoom, but with Teams it doesn't. Interesting outcome. Now let's look at the AMD EPYC. Is this going to be better? A lot of people are saying, hey, the EPYC is actually better than Intel, but is it? Yeah, but if I'm running a benchmark, I'm running this and then I see it running better. Yeah, but running a benchmark is not the same as running a simulate, real people working with it, like this video conference that I'm doing here. Because it's actually, I know it's kind of simulating, but it actually is doing exactly what people working. So I don't have like login VSI or something. I don't have any kind of, I have actually people simulating exactly like people are working, and I'm capturing all that data each 3 seconds. So if we take this is 130 users, and if I compare that with the Intel, it's 135. So that means I can get more users. I know it's a small number, but I can get more users on the Intel compared to the D32S V4, which has the EPYC. That's really interesting. So there's a little bit more high CPU happening with the utilization compared to the Intel. And here again on the, if I look at the AMD, AMD EPYC, but with the Meet, Meet is doing huge impact on the CPU because it's just self-rasterized. They don't off-road redirect, and the user just get hammered. But they actually get even less compared to the Intel. So let's just look at that. So 21 users, and we go back here, and then it says 19. So I'm getting, less users with that AMD EPYC CPU. Now with Zoom, it's 28 users, and I have 51, 71, 44. Compare that, just going back. 42 users. 21, 8. 28, 21, 33. Whoops, quickly, my brain just got, let's see. 42, 34, 40. Remember these numbers, 32, 34, 40. Let's jump into the next one. So my blog makes it very clear instead of this presentation. But you see here is way less. So you're like, oh, what? That's weird, right? This is why it's so important to test every single time, especially if you're moving between instances, right? So this was happened with the V4 last year. Now we have V5, right? But maybe the CPU has been better, right? Because it's a new generation, should be better. But it means also sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. This is why we test. This is why we test when especially we want to scale. So let's try to wrap it all in and look at more kind of the outcome, because there's so much data, and I know that, and that's why I create the blog post. So you can go in and you can read it, and you can compare to each other. But each actually video conference I put in the blogs actually goes very more specific into it and clears that up, which I probably didn't do that well in this presentation. But hey, it's a lot of things that I'm trying to cover. And that's, the beauty of Unplugged. It gets geeky. But you probably, so Teams, Meet, and Zoom are using GPUs, and they're, doing, when Max, they're reverting to self-rasterize on the CPU. But yeah, Teams is doing a better job actually redirecting compared to the other two ones. So number 1, Teams. Number 2, Zoom. And number 3, Meet. But with a GPU, when does it make sense to use a GPU? It does make sense to use a GPU with Zoom and Meet compared without a GPU. And we also lower the CPU utilization with Zoom and Meet compared without a GPU. So it means by adding a GPU, we can actually get more users on, or we can get more CPU cycles for other applications if you want to do that. So the GPU still makes sense. It does. Of course it does. Right. But I'm just saying Teams is doing a really good job. And actually, if you only ran Teams, and some other things, right? This is actually kind of saying you don't need it, which is interesting. Because that's a really big surprise even for me. I never see this coming. Never. This is why we do this kind of things to go in and try to understand why we need this redirection. Now, here's the beautiful thing: many clients cannot use the redirection because of features like blurring a background, so they run Zoom on the endpoint. That's a way, I guess, to kind of get over the hurdle. But again, hey, Microsoft is also making things better, right? And I still think that redirection makes sense, especially, to use with or without. But I've seen many who don't do that. Anyways, let's talk about the D32S, which was the Intel. And if we compare that to the AMD, we see 1.5 more users on the Intel compared to the AMD EPYC CPU instance only, and that's with Teams. Even just comparing that, you get 1.5 more users with the two instances of the CPU compared to the GPU. Where we actually get more users, even a little bit more users with the Intel CPU compared to the AMD CPU. And then with the GPU instance, we get deliver 1.5 more users compared to the CPU both instances with Meet. That's interesting also observation. And then we get more users on the D32S compared to the AMD EPYC on Zoom. One thing I saw with the GPU is also we're getting a better experience, which kind of makes sense, but it does give a performance impact on the CPU, which is interesting, but it actually provides less bandwidth and less latency. So that's something also to consider compared to pure CPU only. That's a lot to digest, I know, but hey, that's why I do this, and I love what I do, right? I love what I do for a living, and I love sharing this in community. Because when you learn all these things, right, it's so important to share it out there. And the great thing is these things are available on my blogs, so you can always go and read it. It's like, I didn't get 25% what Jonas talked about. You can go in and read it on the blogs. I know it's a lot to consume. It's probably one of the most intense, I think, with all the data of presentation I've done. Because there's so many things moving wheels. Yeah. So if we take the Mac, they do a lot of impact on the GPU in code. If they're even just one or two users, and I'm right. I think that's something you guys really have to understand. That's not good. That they have such a big impact with the performance with Teams. Now the great thing is Microsoft just released a new client where they're supporting offloading. So Microsoft fixed this with the new client that's out there, so you can redirect that to Mac with Teams. So I'm really excited Microsoft has that now for this, because that means we don't get an impact with that. Another thing I also observed with the Chrome is they work really great, I think, from a user perspective. More like response, keyboard typing in, mouse movement, and stuff like that. But again, we don't have the redirection of the camera. But there are some small lags, and I really hope Microsoft are going to improve their client for Chrome OS, because I see a huge demand for it. And if you guys also know about Chrome OS Flex, which is supporting old Mac and old Windows devices, which can run Windows 11, and somebody who can upgrade to the latest OS X from Apple, Chrome OS Flex might be, a way to do, right? But that stuff is like brand new. Summary also of the application is I do highly recommend to use Teams, and this investigation very clearly confirms 2x more, even 3x more users compared to Meet and Zoom. But yeah, there's still work to do because of the Android. I still see really great experience with Meet, so I do understand why people want to use that. But again, probably was one of the prime experience, because when I look at how they do the synchronization, the performance impact is like so bad compared to Teams and Zoom. So yeah. Let's just see here, because I do have one more thing I just want to share. Is that okay? Do I have a little more time? I know it was probably a lot of time I just spent.
Yes, you do.
Okay,
You're
awesome.
fine.
So awesome. So I hope I haven't made you all guys fall asleep. I know I showed that picture of a Red Bull and a huge cup of coffee or a cup of tea or water because there's so much to digest. Now, what I want to show. So this is my website, poppelgaard.com. It's been like this for probably like, I think, when did I last do a redesign? Like 9 years ago. But the website is 12 and a half years old. So, you don't have to change something if it works. Anyways, I'm trying to keep things simple. If you go to my website, hey, there's something with video GPUs. I'm not going to cover that. That can be another time. I'm really excited about that. Actually, I've been doing a lot of testing on that. But that's yeah, I have some very exciting things. But let's not talk about that. I can talk for hours. So on my blog archive, what is someone trying to say? So I did actually one of the first things I showed in one of the slides. So here you will see that I have Teams, and I also have Meet, and I have Zoom, and there's other things of Azure Virtual Desktop you can read here. But these are the 3 blogs that I've written that goes, I think, probably a little bit more user friendly. You see the data where I compare the different things with the CPU, RAM, GPU utilization, and input output frames. So all the things that look really complicated, I actually simplified it. I think I simplified even more in the blog, so it's more digestible for the reader. And I did that with all the 3 different workloads. And here you can see also the numbers with scalability and the CPU utilization. So all that kind of stuff is in here, which I think is pretty great. And they are one of the highest, most read blogs I have on my website. So I'm pretty excited about it, that people actually, read it. And thank you guys for also sharing it in your networks. This is pure community, and it's done again by collaboration by AMD or Advanced Microchips. And interesting, right? But looks like they need to improve things. But hey, they're releasing also new architectures. So like V5, they have newer. We haven't done work on that yet, so it'd be interesting to see how big improvement it is. But I think it's really important that you always test the different instances what you want to do. What I want to show about the Zoom. So somebody said, "Oh, it's something old." Thomas just go through. So Zoom is really kind of a beast. What they have for the VDI plugin, they have both for Citrix and VMware, and then they have also for Azure Virtual Desktop, as you see right here. And they go through a lot what you can, what you can't. And I know I did it last year, right? But if I look at what they have in here of the clients, they're only supporting, small variety sets. So let's look at this. Is one of the latest one for Azure Virtual Desktop on Windows 365. Now it's supporting Windows, Agile, Ubuntu. Nothing about Chrome OS and Android. So here you see, like, tons of work, tons of investment being done by Zoom. I'm like, I don't understand. Do they know their users? Do they know their customers? And if you look at the Microsoft Docs of the redirection, the camera, I just want to make that highlight. So this is like, right now today, I went in and looked at it, the docs. It's still the same. So nothing changed. So my content is 100% valid. The only thing that's changed is the Teams, but I also put that into the blog that I released in December, but I changed the blog and add the content in. Now there's an agent where you can redirect Mac with Teams. Last thing, what about prices? Probably somebody wondered, because I know I didn't cover prices in this. So if you take the three different instances, so this is in the, just quickly see here. Yeah, so I'm taking East US 2. So you see the D32ASV4. This is the instance that I've been working on. 1 hour working. And I know I'm not adding other things, and I'm not even clicked hybrid benefits. I know I can make it even further down. So $3.1. This is with the AMD GPU and AMD EPYC. You know, it's not that more expensive, right? It's 33 cents. But this is something you always have to go in and say, what does it cost? What do I gain out of it, right? So yeah, a fraction of the GPU, I would say it definitely makes sense from a valuation and perspective size-wise. But does the GPU give value, right? So I would say it depends. And with these workloads I had, yeah, for Meet and Zoom, the GPU definitely makes sense. You get more users on it. So by paying the 33 more cents, definitely confirms you get more users on it if that's your goal. Now with Zoom, it makes more sense to go and use the Intel, because the Intel has the highest utilization and is the same price as the AMD EPYC instance. Interesting observations, right? So yeah, that was pretty much my presentation. Any questions for you guys?
Wow, thank you. I learned a lot. Looking through, Andrew said it was very interesting. I don't see any questions in the chat. Does anyone have any questions for Thomas?
I do just want to say that, you know, so with something like Thomas's website, I love this stuff, being able to look at all the numbers and comparisons. I will have like 3-4 different tabs open to the same blog in different spots of the blog if I want to, you know, see different variations of you know, I want to easily, instead of scrolling up, scrolling down, you know, constantly trying to remember, you know, the 30, the 24, you know, that type of thing, those numbers. And the other thing too is, you know, Thomas, you bring up a really great point, which is number of users on a system. You know, there was a time where I remember we wanted to get 92 users on a system back in the physical days. You know, you wanted to pack those things in. You know, now it's a, you know, it really is a price performance compromise is what you're looking for. You know, you don't want to look just at price, because that's not going to give you the full value of, you know, maybe you can get with 33 cents more, you get 5 users on, you know, and that doesn't sound like a lot, right? For a single system. You spread that, you know, you spread your users out. If you've got 5, 10,000, 20,000 users, that extra 5 users adds up real quick into, you know, either you're going to have more virtual machines or you're going to have less, depending on, you know, the size and everything that you pick. So don't take the easy way out. You know, it's sometimes it's just real easy to look at the upfront cost and just go, oh, if I stick with this, it'll be cheap and I'll go. But if you have to put more servers in, you're potentially a lot more expensive over the long run. So, you know, definitely keep those things in mind when you are, you know, when you're going through these, because it's not simple. It's definitely not simple with cloud. Figuring out price, performance, and what works best for each individual company. Because as you know, Thomas, I'm sure you'll agree, I could have the same VMs, same OS, same software, 2 different companies that use those apps in completely different ways. And so their user counts, their performance, everything is going to be very different. It's, you know, we can, you know, we can always talk in generalities. Hey, I've seen, you know, this, and this, but when it comes right down to it, each individual organization is unique. And, you know, while generalities can give you an idea, it's really best to do your testing with your users and your apps and how they, and figure out that way to get the information.
Absolutely. And this has been really great, Thomas. I mean, a lot of us work in an environment where we don't get the opportunity to do this type of testing. You've given us so much value and educated us in a way that we can, think about, oh, I don't need a GPU. I'm still wow about that. I surprised. And also the sizing of the compute. And we really appreciate you. And thank you so much for coming. I don't see any questions in the chat, but some kudos, and we'll switch over to Jason now for Liquidware, right?
Thanks. It was great to
Thank
hear
you,
that,
Thomas.
Thanks. It was a great presentation, Thomas. Thank you.
You're welcome. I know I need to also do more with Liquidware, but that's another talk.
Yeah, yeah. You check your inbox for the latest NFR for monitoring GPU. Yeah, thanks.
There you go.
No worries. All right, I'm going to share out a couple things. I'm going to go ahead and just share out my screen because there's no telling what you'll see. All right. Vendor presentation, but I'm going to keep it exciting. So, because we've done some really cool stuff with AVD, and we were partners with the AVD group before it was spelled AVD, back when it was spelled RDMI, right? So we were approached by Clark Nicholson and others in that group especially to see how we could do application layering within AVD, because FlexApp was already starting to gain ground several years ago, and we were able to show how it could run in the earliest versions of RDMI and currently through AVD. And also our digital user experience that we have. So we're a Microsoft partner. We're also in the Azure Migrate and Modernize program, AMP with 2 M's in it, and also the Azure Assessment program. So what that means is that we're able to, our solutions are able to run in AVD seamlessly, and we're actually able to help onboard users to AVD. Our suite can go across any transition and it still says WVD in the slide, but any transition to AVD. If you look left to right and you look at these as columns, whether you're transitioning to AVD or onboarding or in production, full scale production, you can use our solutions across those. And if you're in the transition column, you can harvest out user profiles, documents, and data. We're compatible with FSLogix. A lot of people think we're only competitive with FSLogix, but we have our own profile disk, but we can work with a profile on disk solution such as FSLogix. We can bring in just the smart parts of the profile from the legacy system or from the Citrix system or VMware system and run it even in native AVD or with Citrix and AVD enablements, VMware enablements as well. So, no matter what you want to do there, we can take a Windows to Windows experience and have the end users have a very fast adoption because they recognize their user profile. They recognize that they don't have to recreate Outlook signatures. They don't have to recreate spell checks and all the like. Stratosphere can be used in there to baseline those environments. Profile Unity can be used, of course, as soon as you first log in, you get your profile. You can have it you can have it populate. If you want to use FSLogix, you can have it populate that disk right away, and it happens in seconds at login. It's not a user state migration tool, which would have the user down. We can do a 0 downtime migration with our methodology. We can start to bring in layered apps, attached apps through FlexApp. Our compatibility rating is extremely high with FlexApp. We'll get to that in a minute because that's where I'm going to spend most of our time today. And then when you're in production, you can do policy management. You can work with us with context-aware settings that go well beyond the basics of group policy preferences to more enterprise use cases for hospitals, for education institutions, for those that you have highly mobile workers or even work from anywhere users. So they enabled with certain things when they're in their setting. So if they're at home, they have the apps they need. If they're in the office or in the facility. They have the apps that they need for compliance reasons as well. And then again, Stratosphere UX, digital experience monitoring, can monitor the AVD session. You can even baseline it against what you learned in the earlier session. So that's the three solutions. They're sold as a suite, or they're licensed as a suite, and they can match up with your subscription to AVD. So we can do a pay-as-you-go monthly rate there, and then we run across virtual cloud and physical desktop. So that's the beauty. You shouldn't have a monolithic way or a siloed way of doing your digital user experience. You should have solutions that work across all ways you deliver Windows, and that's where we come into play. Even our Flex app solution, you'll see in a moment, can run with offline use cases. So what's specifically our AVD focus? It's to simplify the app management and to streamline your base images with our attached app layers. You'll see a demo of that in a second. So you can reduce your overall number of images that you have for your users. You basically can just use a generic image of Windows, probably put Office on it or other apps that everyone needs, and then allow us to attach applications for specific use cases, for specific departments of your organization. And it makes the delivery of applications so fast, so easy, and so deliverable because they're disconnected from that base image. You're snapping them in just in time for the users. Again, it's an incredibly high compatibility rate. Works with any way that applications are packaged. MSI executables, MSIXs that are emerging. So it works with all those, and you can attach them. So the compatibility rate is what I want to stress, is the big difference. You'll see that on the coming slide. We also speed adoption of AVD because we can do that zero downtime that we discussed on that previous slide. We can also ensure the ongoing digital experience management with the diagnostics that we provide. So a lot of the things that Thomas did talk about, we can monitor GPU usage, we can monitor the GPU usage all the way down to per app, and we can monitor your overall digital experience. So jumping right into Flex app, it occurred to me in the last week or two as I was thinking about the opportunity to speak to the AVD user group and others, is that these days, this is a net new slide, believe it or not. I worked on this yesterday because I think it's more important to tell the community what Flex app is not, because application layering has gotten egg on its face over the years, and application isolation has very low use cases, and on. Whereas I keep talking about the compatibility of Flex app and the number of apps that you can do this with to attach them simply to your base image is just head and shoulders above anything else that you've ever seen. I can just about guarantee anything you've ever tested, you'll be impressed with the way that we do it with Flex app. And I know I'm putting a lot of marketing speak in there, and I'm usually cautious about that, but I can't overstate the differences big enough and why enterprises are turning to us. So what is Flex app not? It's not application virtualization. We would define that as application isolation. Examples of that would be AppV and ThinApp. Often, too many times, those too much isolated an application where you had to go back in and you had to modify things, you had to modify packages just so they would work with one another. So it's not application isolation. It is native to the way that Windows looks and feels and how other apps look at it. It's not the same as Citrix app layering either, which has been cited as being too heavy-handed. Sometimes organizations are using that just to manage base images. And there was some claims in there that apps would be elastic once they were in Citrix app layering. You could take them and you could use them here and there and everywhere, but that's not been true historically, and even through current day. When you break you can break the system by changing OSs. So it's not the same as app layering, and it is not MSIX. We work with MSIX as a format, as we do MSIs, executables, and even homegrown applications. MSIX is largely a replacement to AppV. It does look promising, but currently the compatibility rate for overall applications in the world that'll work with MSIX, 30%, maybe 40%. It's very low. So your organization, and if you're a partner, you're an integrator, your customers need a full solution today. And that's what FlexApp is. It provides the dynamic application deliveries for all Windows desktops. AVD, yes, but if you've still got Citrix or VMware type desktops running in other areas, it can work across those, and it can even work across laptops when they're offline. And I'll show you that in a moment. It separates out the app delivery from the OS. So Citrix app layering, not necessarily. It's still very much mixed in and tied to that OS, whereas applications always remain elastic and dynamic. They can move from one area to another. They can follow the user and be attached to any Windows version from Windows 7 forward. It supports virtually all application types, as I cited earlier, works all the way through MSIX, but it also supports executables, MSIs, anything homegrown. It gives you a lot of flexibility on when you attach these layers. Is it context aware? Is it only when the user clicks on it? Do you do it at login? You can specify all those things out specific to your use case. It very much supports the move towards work from anywhere strategies, even supporting that laptop use case where you're offline totally. And it supports any cloud, and it's been well reviewed as we see there. I was going to show a demonstration video of FlexApp working in an enterprise, but I'm actually more excited to show FlexApp 1 because this is unlike anything that you've seen. And that's what I'm going to show, a live demo, and we'll come back to this one in a moment. FlexApp 1 is unlike anything that you've ever seen. It takes an application and it brings it all the way down to a single executable. So as you see in this window, I have several FlexApp 1s that if I wanted to, I could email you. Some of these are large, right? But some of these I could email you right now as an attachment. The executable might get blocked, but I could put it in a cloud share. You could download it. You could launch this without having anything Liquidware on your machine at all. As long as you've got a Windows machine, you're going to receive this app and it's going to work. If you look at the example here, this is not the Firefox executable where you'd go out and you download the binaries from Firefox. This is a FlexApp Firefox executable. If you were familiar with ThinApp from years ago from VMware, it's similar to that, but the dramatic difference is that the way that we do this, they look so native to the OS that they work and they're compatible. They're not isolated. This is not application virtualization. This is an application attachment, and not just in the MSIX format, because that compatibility is low. It's in any type of format. So Firefox is not in this system. This is actually my desktop here at home. It could be a laptop, but you look here, you have no Mozilla, you have no Firefox sitting out here. Firefox is not in the system right now. If I were to open this by double clicking, but I'm gonna right click and show you that I hit open, Firefox is now going to be in the system and Firefox is going to open and you can immediately use it in a couple seconds. Firefox is in the system now, okay? It didn't hit the web address that we were looking at, but if I search for something, Firefox is working. Firefox is not tainted this base image at all, and I'll show you why that's true in a moment. So this is real-time results right out of the working Firefox in here. As an end user, you get an extra icon down here so you can see the Flex apps running. Down here, I could stop Firefox if I wanted to. You can roll out Firefox to show up in the start menu. It has there's nothing that needed to be on this endpoint prior. That's almost unbelievable, right? The magic is we have a little filter driver that makes this work that's embedded in this executable, everything needed in this FlexApp 1 container. Okay, these containers can also be pushed out by Intune. They can be pushed out by something like VMware Workspace 1. They can be pushed out by any means necessary and get them onto the endpoints that you want. This is application delivery realized anew. And if I go in here and I look, and I said Firefox is not in the system, right? But if I look over here at program files in my system where it should have put things, you'll find it looks like things are there. what did I lose? Lost my menu. I think I lost File Explorer for a moment. I'll go out here and I'll look again at program files, and I'll look for Mozilla Firefox. You'll see these files look like they're here. All right. And I'll show you the magic of why they think they're there. This is showing you a little bit behind the scenes of what's going on, because you guys like to see what's going on. See this Liquidware container service? That service was put on this instantly when you launched Firefox for the first time. That's the only magic that's making this happen. There is no big player. There is nothing to get down to your endpoints. You want to work from home, you want to work from anywhere, you send them this executable and they instantly launch it. You want to put this executable out through Intune, you can instantly get it out to your desktops. You can even put it up into Windows 10 in the company portal for your company and give a self-service store. It's flexible and it's application delivery anew. Here's the cool thing, and I'll show you how it doesn't taint the image. Windows rot is a big deal. Install an app, uninstall an app. This happens over and over again to your base image. After a while, there's things left behind. There's registry keys left behind. So we also have things for Firefox. I'm not showing this right now, but I could go over to the registry and I could look around. I'd see Firefox all over the registry. This filter driver is looking at a VHD and saying, all these files should be here. All these files should be here. They're not there. And here's how I can prove it. I'll go over here, watch carefully in my file manager here, and all those files that are in that Mozilla file. And when I stop Firefox, they're gone. They were never there. The filter driver just deactivated the app. There's no Windows rot in this environment. It's incredible to think about how easy it is to manage your apps when you do things like this. And we've innovated in this area like no one else. Now you may say, no, how is this different than all the other things? Remember, I started this presentation by telling you what FlexApp's not. It's not application isolation. They look native to the OS. I've got other apps in here that I can do this with, right? These were my FlexApp ones that I had on this specific machine. You like Camtasia? You wanna have Camtasia? Open up Camtasia, and I'll have it in this environment right here. Camtasia needs filters, it needs drivers, it needs to work with a microphone, it needs to work with your camera, and so on and so on. And just like that, I have Camtasia in this environment. Is it really installed? Has it tainted the Windows OS? No, because I could do the same thing and turn off those files. And the base image is pristine. So now, whether you're running Citrix, VMware, AVD, you no longer have to have a bunch of images set up for individual users or departments. Apps are snapped in. I can allocate these through Intune and say the finance department gets these apps as Flex apps. The HR department gets these apps. They have one generic base image that has Office already built into it and a couple other things, and nothing else is built into it. So that's FlexApp 1, but it also tells you a little bit about what FlexApp is in general. Jeff, how did I do on the demo of that?
All right, good. No, I like it. It's obviously I like it because I've pushed this constantly. And you know, it's say it a million times. This is what I believe Unidesk should have been, or morphed into. If you're looking at app attach, you know, not to, you know, hit Microsoft over the head, but it is limited to only MSIX, and it's limited to, you know, specific scenarios like AVD or Windows 365. Yes, you can take it beyond that, but it's a lot more difficult. With FlexApp 1, there is no limitation to how you can deliver a FlexApp. And what I mean by that is, you know, you could do it, you know, through a file share. You could do it from object storage out of Azure, out of AWS, out of GCP. Mm-hmm. You could do it from in the cloud, outside the cloud. And now you can do it through SCCM, Intune, you know, however you want to do it. And like I put in the comments, you could, if you have apps that you use, but you don't want them on your desktop for some reason, you could carry a thumb drive full of your applications. You plug in the thumb drive, double click the app, and away you go. It's that simple. So yes, Jason does not pay me anything. I'm just a huge fan of this because, one, I've seen it work in cutting down images. I'll never say that you'll get down to one image, but, being able to dynamically deliver those one-off type applications that, don't need to go on everybody in accounting or what have you, instead of having to push those down through an SCCM and have them installed forever. But even with in a multi-user environment, again, it all goes back to only the users can see those apps that they have. And now you can easily do physical, virtual, multi-user, whatever the case may be.
Thanks, Jeff. If you want to see how an app gets in there, this is the packaging console. You would have a generic machine. In this case, you could use Hyper-V. I've got VMware Workstation going, and I'm showing Notepad++ because it's such a short time to package that versus a bigger package. So you fill out that simple form right there, and you've got your executable that you downloaded, in this case here. And what it's going to do is it's going to launch, and it's going to mount a VHD on its own. There's no templates or anything to set up. It's all automated. And when it runs this installer, it's running in real time. So we like to say you can package an app in about the same amount of time it takes you to install it one time. So as you'll see, it's almost finished. Once it finished the installer process, it's actually running already on this temporary system. And now it's still in the VHDX. And it's also, this is the enterprise version here that I'm showing you. I showed FlexApp 1 at first, right? And that's the way you can show, but the enterprise version works with our central management console. And in this case, so we packaged up Notepad++. It immediately communicates to your management console for Liquidware that it's available to distribute. You could also, at this point, change this over to a FlexApp 1. So it can run out of band that way. And that's the first demo I showed you. FlexApp 1 package is running out of band of our management console. In this case, we're going to show right here how it runs in band. We've got a FlexApp. We've got all these FlexApps here in the background. And now that we've also got in here Notepad++, and we're going to activate it in this case in our configuration. And,
very cool.
And then we have as I'll finish up here, then we have a user will log on, and they have not only Notepad++, but they have about a half a dozen other applications that are running in that environment. So if I could finish up and say that if you're looking at us for our user experience and metrics, it's Stratosphere UX, and we offer a sizing capabilities in there for AVD and other things. We can baseline user experience, and you can get more information about that by going to our website, and you can download, you can register for these programs. You can also put in these keywords here. I'll try to put them in the window in a moment after I'm done. You can click on those and you can register for our fast track program, and you can get a free assessment from us. We'll tell you how many users are a great fit for AVD and how you can sort those out, even by the types of machines that they should be running out there in AVD. So you optimize those environments for cost purposes and for the way that they should run for your users. If you want more information, you can find it on our website at Liquidware. I'd like to thank the team here again for inviting us to present today. I'll add some of these links to the window so you have them. Thanks.
I think